sir.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Senators. My name is Paul Harris, and I stand in support of this bill. I'm a Maricopa resident. I live in Peoria. I have 25 plus years in corporate executive management for national companies and brands and organizational process and efficiency processes. So because of my background, I was actually asked to be a manager at the audit for the second session, where I managed multiple tables and trained the incoming table managers. When the tallying portion was done, I was trained and then became the lead trainer for the incoming volunteers for the photographic forensic portion of the audit, and was the floor manager for the last few weeks of quality control. I was there when the last pallet at the auditorium left. My name is on the chain of custody forms of hundreds of thousands of ballots. So because of the accuracy and efficiency of my teams, we were tasked with tallying of the damaged ballots, large print ballots, braille ballots, and the special ballots set aside by the Senate. I specifically had the Senate liaison, the Secretary of State's observers, and John Brinke at my tables every day, multiple times a day. But specifically, I was tasked with doing the UOCAVA ballots. A UOCAVA ballot is the Uniform Overseas Civilian Absentee Voting Act ballot. That ballot is sent out to our men and women who work overseas and for our federal people that work overseas to get a chance to vote in the elections.
Seconds.
This is what a ballot looks like that goes out to everybody, right? 11.5 by 19 ballot. When I opened up the boxes of ballots, this is what a ballot looks like that's a UOCAVA ballot. You know what that is? That's an 8.5 by 11 white sheet of copy paper. Did you all know that our ballots come back like this from our overseas people? Did any of you know this? It was such a sham that I had people every day at my tables taking pictures of these ballots that were scanned down. The ballots are scanned. It took my teams 3 complete days to count all of the UOCAVA ballots. You know why? Because in 2016, the numbers were apparently there were 1,600 UOCAVA ballots that came back in the most significant election of our lifetime. In 2020, the numbers were close to 9,600 ballots that came back. And I will tell you as an eyewitness, 95%, because I was asked to tally these personally by the Senate liaisons, all went towards one candidate. And in a state where that candidate won by a little over 10,000 votes, that is its net gain of 8,000 new votes during an election when people were brought home because there was a pandemic and because our federal people, our military people were brought home. I'll take any questions.
My daughter voted via email.
Mm-hmm.
She's in Maryland and voted via email. Is that what you're talking about? They printed out the emails, or what are we talking about?
It was
here?
a printed out email, and I can tell you that when I opened the boxes, the shock of people that saw these boxes opened up with me was so, it literally shocked all of us because these pieces of paper were just stacked, laid on top of one another, wrapped around the edge. There was no form or reason to them. There was no process to them. There was no ballot attached to where this ballot came from. It's just a ballot that's been scanned on a piece of paper. Well, shoot, I guess I could have just printed off thousands of ballots and figured out a way to get them somewhere because I want to know how. I want to know how, as a business person and as a voter, how thousands of ballots are just scanned and who counts these? Who tallies these? Because with my teams that it took us literally, my teams could do about 3,000 ballots in it per setting of actual ballots going around the tables, right? My teams could do those. It took my teams 3 days. Each table, 3 days, 2 sessions each every day to count these because we couldn't touch them, so we had to actually try to look at them because the ballot is scanned down onto this.
Can I ask you a question on
Yes,
that?
ma'am.
Was it a printed email with the name of the person?
No.
Was it a
There's
filled out? Did somebody fill out a ballot for the person who emailed?
We have no idea. All I know is that it was an emailed ballot that comes out like this, and there's no chain of custody. There's no identifying numbers on the ballot. There's nothing to identify where this piece of paper came from. And I will say this, if people want to ask where to find out where this stuff is, it's really easy because every one of those boxes that are under chain of custody have my name on them sitting somewhere here. And I like to find out where those are. And then here's my next question. What happened in Pinal? What happened in Yuma? What happened in Yavapai? What happened in all the other counties when we had an 8,000 net gain of ballots this election year? Do we even know how many federal employees we have outside of Maricopa County that vote absentee? Do we have that number? I know, Sonny, I've asked you to look. I know you've looked. We don't have that number. As a matter of fact, we've at the audit have done a request of information from the federal government on how many actual UOCAVA ballots were out or expected to come back federally. And I will tell you that the last number we heard, that Maricopa County, not Arizona, made up for more than 20% of the nation's UOCAVA ballots. Can somebody explain that one to me?
Is Jen Marsden still here? Jen, would you yield to Jen for a minute and see if she can explain to us the process of how do we know about UOCAVA, and then who transfers those emails onto a ballot, educate us on this.
Madam
Jen.
Chair, I will try. So, okay, with a UOCAVA voter, you got to remember that they can't always return their ballot the way that we return ballots when we live here, right?
Right.
So we allow for them to return ballots via fax, for example. That fax comes into a secure portal at the Secretary of State's office. The Secretary of State's office contacts the county where that UOCAVA voter is casting their ballot and says, we have a secure form from a UOCAVA voter. We're going to send it to you. Yeah, it probably does get printed out on regular paper because
Not probably.
it does.
Guys,
100% it does,
because
because
have dialogue back and forth.
that's
like that.
how the system works. So then what happens is a board of two people of opposing parties look at that transmission that came in from that voter, and they have to transfer those votes onto a piece of paper that can be tabulated through our tabulation equipment.
Okay, let me stop you there.
Yes?
The board of two people, who verifies the parties of the people who are there in that board? Who verifies that that person is a Republican and that person is a Democrat?
Madam Chair, someone's going to text me if I'm wrong. It's the county. Those people come in, and either they're temporary workers from the county, they're full-time employees of the county, and the county checks their voter registration records to make sure that they have opposing party people doing this work.
And who selects them? The party or the county?
Who selects them? Madam Chair, I don't know the answer to that. I think it's the county, but let me find out who selects them. Okay.
Because of course we want confidence in who those folks are,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
So we want to know who's choosing them and who's verifying their party status and whatnot. So I'd
Absolutely.
like to know
And
that.
Madam Chair, I understand, and I know I can tell the gentleman next to me is very frustrated and passionate and concerned, and I appreciate all of that. But that is not an example of the system not working. That is actually an example of the system working the way the legislature lined it up. It was Mr. Payton's bill years ago
So what
when
we're
we
gonna-
allowed for that.
What I'd like to do is let's learn a little bit more about stuff that we, behind the scenes that we don't know, that we
Okay.
can add to policy to change that and tighten it up.
Okay.
Okay, good. Was there anything else, sir, that you wanted to add?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Jen.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Madam Chair, and I don't know who to address this to, maybe Mrs. Marston or not, but Mr. Harris, how do you know that that's that piece of paper you saw was an original and not a copy of a copy of a copy?
There's no way to know that is the point. And again, we were more shocked by the volume of ballots that it wasn't, again, so if it took two people, let me just say it took two people. It took a team of 5 in 8-hour sessions, basically, to tally all those ballots that came through. I mean, so 2 people doing it, that's impressive. Love to know how long it took them to do it, to get the vote in time for us to call the race in Arizona. Just saying, because it took my team of 5, 6 including me, to tally those ballots, just the UOCAVAs.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I mean, Madam Chair, this is what I'm having a difficult time with. We don't have that many guardsmen deployed. We don't have that many. I mean, we're talking about the winding down of Afghanistan and almost a skeleton crew in Iraq of active duty deployed. When I was in the Marines, I voted absentee. I actually had a ballot. I never heard of this vote by email.
Well, you had a ballot, but you sent it in somehow.
Yeah, and of course, I'm convinced none of my absentee ballots ever made it in, because I don't trust the postman. Okay, anyway, but, especially if you're on ship, there really is no mail buoy out there that everybody just, anyway. But I'm having a hard time grasping this 9,800?
9,600 plus, yes. Close to 10,000.
And what, in 2016, we had what?
A little over 1,600.
1,600.
Which
And we don't
might make
have
more
that many.
sense.
Our entire guard is not even that many people, and we don't have anybody deployed. This is, yeah, okay.
Okay.
These are things that really need to be looked at. And then once again, we don't have no way of knowing that that piece of paper that you pulled out of the boxes was a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. So really, realistically, the chain of custody on that is kind of like out the door.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I will say, if I may speak to the other, when
Yes,
when
you
I
can.
opened the other boxes that were actual ballots, chain of custody was there. I mean, I did see chain of custody. We did on the label of the box and all this label just was written UOCAVA. We opened them up. There weren't batch sheets in between all of them like we saw with the other ballots that we would see. There weren't all those. There weren't again, which is why I had the Secretary of State's observers and Ken Bennett and John Branke at my tables both times while all these were being counted, while photos were being taken, not just from all the cameras that were overly redundant during the audit from on the table, which saw everything and the above, but they actually took pictures of these because we needed to show how is this possible that in 2020 we were sending in ballots on hammer mill or whatever it is, 8.5 by 11 white copy paper.
So just to dial us closer back into the bill, one of the reasons they're UOCAVA is, and they can't get one of these to send back.
Correct.
So we're going to have to solve that issue. We're going to have to look at that. West Virginia has a unique way of doing it, but we're going to talk about it here because it's not on the agenda. So we've got work to do, and I appreciate your testimony. Would love to sit down with you and talk more
Absolutely.
on this. Okay. Thank you, Paul.
Madam
Thank you.
Chair,
Yes.
I just wanted to add that those UOCAVA ballots also include family members of our military people that are also living abroad. Thank you.
Thank you. And to that point, I think probably the number one goal, and I have said this in every elections committee hearing, is voter confidence. And when we have this kind of loosey-goosey kind of way, regardless of what side you're on, it stirs the imagination of the voter. So if there's a way that we can tighten it up, we're not trying to suppress anybody's vote. We just want to increase the confidence that there wasn't a bunch of copies ran off. And there's, and so we all need to learn more about the process. And if we see things like this that we could tighten up, easy to vote, hard to cheat, right? So that's the idea. So as we're going through this last season, 2 years now, we've learned quite a bit, and we're not here to try and take anyone's vote. We just want to increase the confidence of the voter so the voter will actually go to the polls and vote. Okay. Anybody else?
Cindy Sullivan.